moving over to Mr. Kaikini's Mithun number 2 and other Mumbai stories, translated by Ms. Niranjana, Tejaswini Niranjana. We are looking at a collection of stories that span through several years, from the 70s until now, talking about lives in Bombay, in Mumbai, Bombay then, Mumbai now, that could well be in a film set, within a screen, suddenly waking up, getting up to come and have a cup of tea with you, like Mr. Kaikini himself puts it. Beautiful stories. Stories and people with whom you want to sit and have a conversation with or look at, and sometimes get lost and just sit and observe what they do, because that's what life is all about. So, Kaikini sir, could you tell us about what inspired you to put these stories together? A little more, could you elaborate about this entire collection of stories?
Good morning. It's a really pleasure to be here with you all, with Tejaswini and the under the tree. In fact, we should have been above the tree, but it's too very hot. So it's nice to be with you all. Thank you for reading the book, Nirmala. Maybe you are the first one to read it. Yeah, Bombay Stories. In fact, these are the stories which I have written in last 50 years, 40 to 50 years, in 70s, 80s, 90s, because I was in Bombay for almost 25 years. Now, in last 6 years, Tejaswini Niranjana picked my stories, which are Bombay based, and translated them into English. So these are original stories translated into English by Tejaswini Niranjana. The first bunch came 5 years ago, titled No Presents Please. And this is the next bunch, which is being released now, which is already in the market, that is Mithun number 2. Yeah, Mumbai was an enigma for me. I am from Gokarna, which is a coastal temple town in near Karwar in Karnataka. For all of us, like for most of the people from Kerala also, in those days, 60s, 70s, Bombay was a kind of a enigmatic destination in search of new tomorrow and new dreams and everything. So the way we went there, and the way we tried to look for a opportunity, look for our own, to listen to our own footsteps in a maddening crowd, and it was a completely liberating experience. It liberated us from the slots of small towns, linguistic slots, different kinds of slots, man-made slots. So we liberated all those barriers in Bombay at that time. So Bombay was a space, it was a collective mind, collective space where an individual enlightenment happened. You know, we look for enlightenment. I felt we need not go to Himalayas for enlightenment. We should go to VT station. We should travel in local trains. You should be in public bus stand, public transport. The entire Bombay journey, life was like a public transport. So everything, exclusive seemed vulgar. It has to be inclusive to bring some meaning into our life or pursuits. That's how the journey was. So maybe my writing, Bombay influenced a lot, not just as a backdrop. It became a character, it became an insight, it became a window to look at the human world. So maybe I can tell that much to beginning. Maybe Tejaswini can add from her angle.
Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure. This is our first launch. The book just came out 10 days ago. So we're very happy that it's happening here in Kerala. And I'm sure that Jayant shares the same sentiments. The other thing that Jayant and I share, apart from having known each other when we were children, is that we both were in Bombay, but not in touch with each other at the time, in some time in the late 70s, early 80s. I went there to study, and along with Jayant, and to give a slightly different interpretation of, or different gloss on what he was saying, I would also see myself as someone who went from the outside, but is also part of the insiderness of what it takes to be a migrant in Bombay. Yeah. So I think that the stories that I have translated in No Presents Please and also in Mithun number 2. There are two kinds of stories. I'll speak a little bit about the first book at the beginning. In the first book, we had a lot of characters that were mostly migrants into Bombay and people who were, had grown up there. They spoke all kinds of languages. I don't remember anyone who actually spoke Kannada. Although Jayant is writing about them in Kannada, giving the dialogue in Kannada, but the people are speaking Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi, or many other languages as well. So that was a very different kind of challenge for me, and Nirmala, I'm sure, will have more questions. So I'll come to the challenge of translation a bit later. So I'm just saying something about Bombay here. In the second book, our characters are mixed. Apart from the characters who are like non-Kannada migrants into Bombay, we also have a lot of Kannada migrants from the coast, like Jayant himself, from Gokarna, from Tadadi, from many other smaller towns down the coast from Bombay, and how then they hitch a ride, they get on a truck, they take a bus, they find many means of coming to the city to make their livelihoods happen. There are all kinds of fascinating characters, including an elderly lady who's brought to cook for her nephew and then develops her own life in Bombay. So I encourage you to read that. That story is called News for Sumitra. I could go on and on about the characters, but I just wanted to mark this sense of insider-outsiderism that I think characterizes both Jayant's approach to Bombay and mine as a translator. Because as a translator, I have to be empathetic to what the writer is attempting to do and be able to get into the skin of the characters in the same way as a writer has.
Given where we stand as a country today and, addressing the whole democratic framework of the country, and it is actually very important and imperative to delve further into this dialogue of insider versus outsider. And sir, as you went to Bombay as an outsider, right? So could you delve a little bit more about that and bring out some anecdotes about what was going on in your life and how these stories came about? Because there must have been struggles, there must have been very deep inner dialogues versus what's going on around you. Yeah?
It's all very, very interesting, because I still feel it is not I don't say it is a memory, it is still, if I think of it, it is there around, I can palpable it, I can experience it. Bombay was like a big, huge collective mind to me, There is nothing like inside or outside after going there. It was like I can see my mind, in local train, if somebody is wiping his sweat, I was feeling he is wiping my sweat. That kind of a proximity, that kind of a thing, and anybody could share anything anywhere, in a bus stand or in a emergency ward when you are waiting outside a operation theatre. It was very easy to share a smile, to share a talk. So it was very interesting, because I always use a metaphor. Basically, I am a poet, and Tejaswini is also a poet, and that has played a great role in translating my stories, because only translations are very safe in the hands of a poet, because he translates what is untranslatable. So, because that's what it is. So I went to a distant relative's place. It was a small home. Bombay, invited, absorbed everybody. I went there, I stayed there for some time. And I remember that one of the relatives used to come in the night and just was looking at me, whether I was slept or not. I was getting scared. What is he up to? What is happening? Then when he was convinced that I am slept, he will put off the fan and go back. So these are the small details. And then I used to, read poems in Kannada Sangha there, like Malayalam Sangha, Tamil Sangam, Kannada Sangha was there. We were very, young bachelors going there, reading poems. And after reading poems, they gave me a bouquet of flowers. So I was coming back with bouquet of flowers, beautiful flowers. And in Makdunga train, in the rush, somehow I entered. And there are people here, people there. My bouquet was getting into the nose of somebody. And everybody was getting, and somebody asked me, "Bechne ka hai kya?" He thought I am selling flowers. See, suddenly that, that ground zero from poetry reading at Karnataka Sangam, and here I am looking to somebody else, I have come to sell the flowers. See, this kind of a thing. And another thing which, that lingo of Bombay, you know, it is a plurality. See, like the way plurality, you know, like, because it is, we do not even give a name to it, because we are, our country, our society is a plural society. So, Mumbai was a space of plurality, city of plurality, which spoke in singular. Like, तेरे को, मेरे को, तू जाता है क्या, तू आता है क्या. They never said कि आप जा रहे हैं, आप किधर जा रहे हैं, nothing like that. You know, see that informality. Even a security man would talk to a top boss. तुमको तेरे को अच्छा है, तुम एसी में काम करता है, हमको इधर धूप में खड़ा रहना पड़ता है. See these kind of very, unassuming and very informal. That is typical Bombay conversation language. So that liberated me. And another one word regarding death, we all have very serious words when you talk about death, like वो गुजर गए, वो भगवान को प्यारे हो गए, वो अब नहीं रहे, he passed away, all these things. But Bombay has only one word for that, off हो गया, which was very liberating for me also. One of my colleagues didn't come. I called him. He said, "साहब मैं नहीं आऊँगा. I won't be able to come for another 1 week." क्या हो गया? मेरे पिताजी off हो गया. So that off, it was a very spiritual term. Switch off, switch on. It's so simple. So all these kind of things made me feel that the mind is outside. It is palpable. There is a collective mind, if at all. We talk about collective mind in our works, in our value system, but it is there. It can be experienced, and it is a minimal. Everybody lives in a minimal space there. It's minimal. Houses are minimal. Even in that space, there will be somebody who has come like me from native place. There will be somebody else who has come there. Even God has a very small place there, above fridge or above some Godrej cupboard. They will give him a small space, tiny space. It's very cute. So it's a city with a minimal thing, which is called as maximum city. See the resonance of between being minimal and maximum. So these are the things. There are a couple of anecdotes. Maybe I will tell later if there is time. Okay.
Would you like to add to this whole?
I can't. It's a very hard act to follow with all the observations and jokes about life in Mumbai for a small town person going there, etc. But I'll wear my other hat as an academic and plug another book of mine, which is not here today. This is a book called Musicophilia in Mumbai, Performing Subjects in the Metropolitan Unconscious. And in that book, which traces the story of how Hindustani music came to, in many ways, became what I call the lingua musica of Mumbai, I am also delving into the people from across India who came to make Bombay their home, how they became obsessed with this thing called Hindustani music, how did the melodies come to them through the Parsi Natak and through the Marathi Sangeet Natak, etc. And one point I make, which is like Jayant's point about the collective mind, is that I suggest there is something called a metropolitan unconscious in Mumbai. And I say, what is this metropolitan unconscious? It is a repertoire of all the ways in which we think and behave and act and speak and sing, if you like, which is not belonging to any one person or doesn't come from any one village in North India or wherever, but really is the compendium of things that people have brought with them. And everyone has access to those ways of speaking, seeing and thinking, not just the person who brought them there. So this is my idea of the metropolitan unconscious. And for me, the stories in Mithun number 2, the stories in No Presence Please, are also very much part of the repertoire that you find in the metropolitan unconscious.
It's interestingly, you were talking about how only a poet can translate a work well, and your writing itself is so poetic, and the translation is also poetic, especially given like I was reading one sentence of this woman tying her hair and how she shakes it about here and there, So could you talk about first of all, the artistry of writing poetically in Kannada, and then you translating that bit in English, and we could probably also juxtapose it with the reading from between the Kannada and the English, yeah?
See, writing, it just happens, like, I don't like to talk about my own writing always. It's because stories are there, readers should, it's meant for readers to figure it out. I'm a very impulsive writer, I don't plan things. So many of my friends don't believe it. There are many friends of mine who plan their writing. They exactly know how it goes. For me, one Mr. Yashwant Chittal, he's a very well-known writer who was also in Bombay. His novel Shikari is available in English in Penguin. He was like, he was my mentor, sensibility-wise. He always said, I don't write what I know, I write to know, he said. See, writing is a mode of thought, new mode of thought. I don't think while walking or doing something and then go and sit and write. My stories I catch only, they come to me only when I sit for writing. So wherever I think that is there's a scrap shop where a lady comes out of a dressing mirror which is kept for sale. All that thing happens when you sit for writing. Maybe they have got into me in my living state. That's what I always feel. So if youngsters, many people come and ask me, sir, ಹೇಗೆ ಕವಿತೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಬರೆಯೋದು, how to write a poetry or how to write a story, I tell them, get lost in human world. Your stories will come in search of you. Your stories will find you. We should first get lost. It is not a mode of a journalist, looking for subjects, objects here and there. It's not that. It is at a living, you intensely live, passionately live life. Automatically they become part of your inner core. And when you sit for writing, if you start with a thread, all relevant details which are very relevant to that thread which you are pursuing will come there. So that's how it is. I think it's only, I remember in my schools we used to have magicians who will come and eat color papers like this and drink a water also above that. And then they will pull out long ribbons of colorful paper ribbons like that. I think as a writers we can only do in our living state, we go on eating the experience, absorbing the experience. So when then it becomes our inner strength for whatever we are going to search or seek. And that's why I was feeling, because Tejaswini's poetry I have read. She has translated Neruda into Kannada 30 years ago. So the sensibility wise, there was something, our restlessness is same. Because you cannot create from a privileged position. Most of the time we feel we can create from a privileged station, seeing from, no, you have to be on ground zero there. And then you can catch things. So my attempts are in that direction, I feel. Yeah, poetic nature, I don't know, because many people tell me if I write one above the other sentences, small one, I call it poetry. Then I write, continuously, I call it as essay. And if I put some characters, I call it as short story. It is something they say, my style is same. I mean, like, I like to talk through metaphors and images, because that is experiential, it lingers in you. And metaphors and images come from experience. Any experience leaves its mark in you as an image. I will tell you, there was once one incident, I think it comes in one of the earlier stories. There was one person on there is a Z bridge in Matunga in Bombay. In one of when the commuters were coming and going, on that bridge, one person was struggling with the epilepsy attack. So people didn't know what to do, but he was being taken care of. Somebody said, usko pani de do. Somebody said, usko kuch khilao. Somebody said, usko hawa dalo. So people were doing something and going. Somebody were like that. He was being taken care in 10 minutes by hundreds of people, which was a passing, it was a moving crowd. Then somebody said, there is a paper in his pocket. Maybe there will be some address or number whom we can contact about that. So then that paper was removed and somebody opened it, and there was a design of a map. There was like a map-like thing. You don't know, it looked like a map of Bombay, map of Maharashtra, Karnataka. No, it was very vague map. So somebody said, ये तो कुछ गड़बड़ है, वो underworld का लगता है. He might be from underworld, this could be a map. Somebody said, ये आधा हो सकता है, आधा और किसी के पास हो सकता है. When they meet somewhere, there will be some explosion. So it could be some code language of something. Then there was a boy there, who noticed it. He said it is a पाँव का निशानी है. Means it was a measurement for buying a shoe of a baby. See, it was a baby's foot, that which was drawn in pencil. See how different kinds of, how none of us could see a baby's footprint there. So that person had made it to buy a pair of shoes for the baby. So these kind of images, they stay with us. If I go home and I will write a poem on this, no. It will come when you are doing something after 20 years, automatically it will come in search of you. So I think poetry is in the way you look at life, not in the what you create. So poetic or whatever we call, it is in the way we look at things, without any filters, without any bias, just pure sheer love for life. That's what I feel. More I talk, more it will be like I'm talking in favor of my writing. It looks odd to me.
I just want to make one small point, which is that it's not as though when you look at Jayant's writing, whether it's something that calls itself poetry or film lyrics or short story, it's not as though you'll immediately say, oh, this is poetic because it has something recognizably metaphorical about it, right? So when I read the works, I don't necessarily read them in that way. The most mundane and odd things, like, or very ordinary things too, take on poetic significance in Jayant's writing. I can think of no better example. I mean, there are two examples. The second you will hear us read about. The first example is a story called Keku and Pyare Lal in our book here. And that's about a Xerox shop owner and a man who sells fruits in front of his shop, and how they strike up a very unlikely friendship. So the Xerox shop is an intensely poetic space in that entire story. And so are the slightly bruised fruits that the man is selling in front of the shop. So I'm just saying that you will find this to be the poetic heart of the stories. I think we should take a break now and read something. I'd like to call on Jayant that I selected this passage. It's from a story called Spotless. I'll tell you a bit of the background. There is a man called KK. He's come to be called KK. He's an artist, and he is also a sort of a vagrant. He used to be involved in left movements in Bombay. He went off to Vishwa Bharati, trained as an artist, came back and decided to teach all the slum children how to draw. That's all he does. He moves around. He's now nearly 80 years old. He moves around everywhere. He carries chalk in his bag. He gives chalk to the kids. He gives them pencils. He gives them paper and gets them to draw. Yeah. The part that we would like to read out to you is when he encounters a little girl on the street who is guarding a picture of Shirdi Sai Baba. You will see this, those of you are familiar with Bombay and some other cities as well. Children draw, or they have a large painting of Shirdi Sai Baba on the street, made in chalk, a sketch in chalk, and people will just give money as they walk past. Yeah, Jayant, I call on you to read a passage in Kannada, and I'll read the same in English.
This is in Kannada. I hope at least a couple of you are can. ಬೀದಿಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಣ್ಣ ಬಣ್ಣದ ಕಡುವಿನಿಂದ ಶಿರ್ಡಿ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾನ ಬೃಹತ್ ಚಿತ್ರ ಬಿಡಿಸುವ ಕಸುಬೊಂದು ಆಗಲೇ ಶುರುವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಇಂಥ ಚಿತ್ರವೊಂದೊಂದು ಬರೆದು ಮೂಲ ಚಿತ್ರಗಾರ ಕಣ್ಮರೆಯಾದ ಯುಗಗಳ ನಂತರವೂ ಈ ಚಿತ್ರ ಹೊಸ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೊಂದು ಹೊಟ್ಟೆಪಾಡಾಗಿ ಮುಂದುವರಿಯುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಅಂದರೆ ಮಳೆ ಗಾಳಿಗೆ ತೊಳೆದು ಹೋದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ಉಳಿಯುವ ಮೂಲ ರೇಖೆಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ತಿದ್ದಿ ಹೊಸ ಕಲಾವಿದರು ತಯಾರಾಗಿ ಕೂತು ನಾಣ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ದೋಚಲು ಹಕ್ಕುದಾರರಾಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದರು. ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಚರ್ನಿ ರೋಡ್ ಸ್ಟೇಷನ್ನಿನ ಬಳಿ ಭೋರ್ ಎಂಬ ಮಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕ ಕೇಕೆ ರಸ್ತೆ ಬದಿ ನಿಂತರು. ಎದುರು ರಸ್ತೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೃಹತ್ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾನ ಚಿತ್ರ ಬರೆದಿತ್ತು. ಜೋಡಿ ಜಡೆಯ ಪುಟ್ಟಿಯೊಬ್ಬಳು ಅದರ ನಾಣ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಕಾವಲು ಕಾಯುತ್ತಾ ಕೂತಿದ್ದಳು. ಮಳೆ ಜೋರಾಗುತ್ತಾ ಹೋದ ಹಾಗೆ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾನ ಒಂದೊಂದೇ ಅಂಗಗಳು ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಣ್ಮರೆಯಾಗತೊಡಗಿದವು. ನಾಣ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ಕರ್ಟಿನ ಜೇಬಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿಕೊಂಡವಳೇ ಪುಟ್ಟಿ ಸುರಿಯುವ ಮಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾನ ಸರಿ ಮೋರೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಕ್ ಚೂರು ಹಾಕಿ ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ಕೂತು ಬಿಟ್ಟಳು. ಕಾಗೆಯಂತೆ ತೊಯ್ದು ತೊಪ್ಪಡಿಯಾದರೂ ಆಕೆ ಏಳಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕೇಕೆಗೆ ಹಿಂಸೆಯಾಗಿ ಅವಳನ್ನು ಕೈ ಹಿಡಿದು ದರದರ ಮರೆಗೆ ಎಳೆದು ತಂದು ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸಿದರು. ಅವಳೀಗ ಕೂಗಿಕೊಳ್ಳತೊಡಗಿದಳು. ಮಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಳೆದು ಹೋದರೆ ಉಳಿದದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಭಾಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬಿಡಿಸಬಹುದು, ಆದರೆ ಮುಖ ಬಿಡಿಸೋದು ಕಷ್ಟ. ಮುಖದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಸುವೇ ಬದಲಾಗಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟರೂ ದಂಧಾ ಚೌಪಟ್, ಯಾರೂ ಹಣ ಹಾಕಲ್ಲ, ಅಷ್ಟೂ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ ನಿನಗೆ ಎಂದು ಕೇಕೆನ ಕೈ ಹಿಡಿದುಕೊಂಡು ಮತ್ತೆ ಪಚಪಚ ಕೈ ಕೊಸರಿಕೊಂಡು ಮತ್ತೆ ಪಚಪಚ ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಓಡಿ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಚ್ಚುತ್ತಿರುವ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬಾನ ಮೋರೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೂತುಬಿಟ್ಟಳು. ಕೇಕೆ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ನಿಂತು ನೋಡಿದರು. ಕಲೆ, ಹಸಿವು, ಹಣ, ಮಳೆ ಎಲ್ಲದರ ಎರಕದ ಪ್ರತಿಮೆಯಂಥ ಹುಡುಗಿ ಫಳಫಳ ಮಿನುಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದಳು. ಮಳೆ ನಿಂತು ಹೊಳವಾಗಿ ಬಿಸಿಲಿಗೆ ರೋಡು ಒಣಗುವ ತನಕ ಕೇಕೆ ಆಕೆಯ ಜೊತೆಗಿದ್ದು ಕಾದರು. ಬದಿಯ ಇರಾಣಿ ಹೋಟೆಲಲ್ಲಿ ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಬನ್ ಪಾವ್ ತಿನ್ನಿಸಿದರು. ಕಾಳಜಿ ಬೇಡ, ಇಡೀ ಚಿತ್ರ ತಿದ್ದಿ ಬರೆದು ಕೊಡುತ್ತೇನೆ ಎಂದು ಸಂತೈಸಿ ಅವಳ ಜೊತೆ ಕುಕ್ಕರು ಕೂತು ತಮ್ಮ ಜೋಳಿಗೆಯ ಬಣ್ಣದ ಕಡುಗಳಿಂದ ಹೊಸ ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬನನ್ನು ಬಿಡಿಸಿಕೊಟ್ಟರು. ಸಾಯಿಬಾಬನ ಮುಖದ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೆರಳುಗಳನ್ನು ಬಳಸಿ ಅವರು ಶೇಡಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಪುಟ್ಟಿ ಮೊಣಕಾಲ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೊಗಸೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮೋರೆಯನ್ನಿಟ್ಟು ನೋಡುತ್ತಾ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಪರವಶಳಾಗಿ ಹೋದಳು. ಕೇಕೆ ಅವರ ಬೆರಳುಗಳ ಸ್ಪರ್ಶಕ್ಕೆ ಚಿತ್ರದ ರೇಖೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಜೀವ ತುಂಬಿ ಬರತೊಡಗಿತು. ಆ ಸೌಮ್ಯ ಮುಖ ಕ್ಯಾಲೆಂಡರಿನಷ್ಟೇ ಚಿತ್ರವತ್ತಾಗಿ ಮೂಡಿಬಂತು. ಸಂತಸ ತಡೆಯಲಾಗದೆ 7 ವರ್ಷದ ಪುಟ್ಟಿ ತನ್ನ ಜೇಬಿನಿಂದ 2 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ನೋಟು ತೆಗೆದು ಕೇಕೆ ಅವರ ಕಿಸೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿದಳು. ಅವಳು ನೋಟು ತೆಗೆದ ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ಕಿಸೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿದ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಅನುಭವಸ್ಥ ನಿರಂಬಳ ನಿಲುವಿತ್ತು. ಅವಳು ನೋಟು ತೆಗೆದ ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ಕಿಸೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಹಾಕಿದ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ನಿರಂಬಳ ಮತ್ತು ಅನುಭವಸ್ಥ ನೋಟವಿತ್ತು. ಬೀದಿಯ ಸಾರವಿತ್ತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ತನಗೂ ಸಂಬಂಧವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ ಎಂಬ ಸಂಗತಿ ಎಂಬಂತೆ ಕೇಕೆ ಅದನ್ನು ನಿರ್ಲಕ್ಷಿಸಿದರು. See, this is what it is. See, in Bombay streets, artists used to draw Sai Baba by chalk on tar roads and then sit there and collect. Artist will not be around. He will be somewhere, but people will put some coins. He will come and collect. So this will happen for few days for that artist. Then artist will go to some other area. But this other, young children, they will come. In spite of that, that painting, the picture is removed also, they will, redress it and make more money from that, sit there like that. So when it is raining, it is very bad, it will be washed away. So here this girl is sitting on that face of the Sai Baba and trying to save that picture so that she can earn more. So it's a kind of a very funny moment where hunger, art, rain and everything is mixed. So that's what is in this Kannada piece. Now, of course, she will read it.
I'm sure I'll be able to say all this in the translation. So you can hear me clearly, right? Yeah. On the Mumbai streets, it was becoming common to draw giant portraits of Shirdi Sai Baba. Long after the original artist had disappeared, the saint's picture helped quite a few street children to earn a living. Although the wind and the rain had made the portraits indistinct, it was still possible to add new color to the original lines and collect coins from passers-by. Once KK was caught in a thunderstorm near Charni Road station. As he stood by the side of the road, he saw a large portrait of Sai Baba on the other side, with a little girl with 2 pigtails standing guard over the coin collection. As the force of the rain increased, the saint's features began to disappear. Putting the coins into her skirt pocket, the little girl covered the Sai Baba face with a piece of plastic and kept on sitting there. She didn't budge even though she was as wet as a drenched crow. Aghast, KK dragged her under a nearby awning. She began to scream, "Don't you understand? The rest of the picture can be drawn again, but not the face. If even a slight change, business will go fut. No more coins." She shook off KK's hand, ran back through the rain to the portrait, and sat on the plastic sheet covering the face. KK stood watching in silence. Like a statue welded together by art, hunger, money, and rain, the girl sparkled in the street. Until the rain stopped and the sun came back to dry out the road, KK waited with the girl. He took her to get a bun pav in the Irani restaurant close by. "Don't worry, I'll repair the whole picture for you," he consoled her. Crouching with her on the street, KK took out his colored chalks and created a brand new Sai Baba. When he used his fingers to shade the colors on the saint's face, the little girl sat on her knees with her face in her hands, totally captivated. At the touch of KK's fingers, the lines began to come alive. The peaceful face was as clearly drawn as on a calendar. Unable to contain her joy, the little girl, perhaps 7 years old, took out a 2 rupee note from her pocket and put it into KK's. Her movements as she transferred the money to him were practiced and serene. The gesture seemed to distill the essence of the streets. KK did not pay attention to it as though it didn't concern him. I'll read one more line. Before he went to bed that night, KK put his hand into his pocket and found the 2 rupee note. He thought for some time about whether it was merely a piece of paper, a value, or a cost. He had surprised himself when he noticed the girl putting the note in his pocket and did not mind the act. If he had reacted, the gravity of the moment would have been destroyed.
So beautiful, both in the Kannada and the English translation. And it looks like, as writer, translator, you'll share a very deep bonding. How did you all go about this process?
It's very difficult to comment on something that people are noticing from the outside. But when you're inside a friendship, the friendship is simply there, right? We haven't tried to craft the bond or worked on it or done anything to create it. So we have known each other a very, very long time. Not continuously, but off and on. I think I first met Jayant when I was like 16 or something. I did translate his poetry a very long time ago, and after that we didn't meet for probably 20 years. But we've always read each other's work, known that we existed, shared a lot of mutual friends, family, etc. And only when Jayant moved back to Bangalore and I moved back to Bangalore in the late 90s did we meet again. And very soon after, I think that part of the creation of the bond is owed to V.K. Karthika, our publisher from Westland, who actually commissioned the first volume when she was working with HarperCollins, and made us work together in a way which we hadn't actually planned, and then commissioned this one, Mithun number 2, so the bond strengthens and continues to get shaped. Thank you, Karthika.
Yeah, thank you, Karthika. You are here because he is the one. I mean, like, who is responsible for both the books of us. So it's informally, it is the first launch moment today, and it's so nice you are here. Thank you. Yeah, we met in the childhood, then we got lost like brothers in a film, and met after the interval, where one becomes police inspector and one becomes a thief. I don't know who is who. So it was very interesting to meet her through this. And I have seen my few friends who are translated into English, how they work very closely with a translator. In our case, it was not like that at all. See, Tejaswini worked on herself. She did everything. Then she sent the script to me. I only looked for if there is anything, whatever I have written in my Kannada, if suppose she got it wrong, like some regional words are there, like North Canara words are there. I've used typical Bombay words, like khalas and all that. So all those things, I just looked for it. So there are not at all much of this. Within 3-4 days, I think I could read the entire book, and it was very nice. So in a way, in fact, it was a different experience for me, because most of the stories were written in 80s, 90s, in early 2000, and now reading them in English was, I was just like a reader. I was reading them. It was no more my creation. But while reading, I was getting in touch with that Jayant of 30 years ago, that Jayant of 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 40 years ago. Suddenly that mind got evoked in me while reading this. So it was a very, in some places I found it very naive and amateurish, because I have written about marriage when I was not even married, all those things. But it's a fun also, going through that. So it's nice. I mean, that experience of reading your own story in a different language. And that multilingual sensibility we're talking, it's very interesting. See, I speak Konkani at home. At home, our language is Konkani. In Bombay, I spoke Konkani at home. When you go out in local trains, I talked in Hindi with my fellow commuters. Once I was in my office, I talked in Marathi, Gujarati, and English with my colleagues. I came back home and wrote in Kannada in the night. See, it's very interesting. So many languages. Multilingual sensibility is a virtue for Indian society. So, even it's a big virtue, and it is a plurality again. we sometimes become very much fanatic about languages, and we close so many doors which is available to us, which is very rare, like I love that multilingual sensibility. So, see, look at my characters, as you rightly said, Pyarelal, Keku Bhai, Antariksh Kotari, Dagdu Parab, Sarojini, Muchi Miya, none of them are Kannadigas. They come into my story and they talk in Kannada. That is the best revenge I can take on them. So, that space itself is different. Tejaswini has put it in her preface in, I think, No Presents Please. First thing, they liberate the characters from their linguistic identities. So it's a very tricky thing for a Kannada writer to write a story which is in a non-Kannada milieu. So it's a different kind of a experience for me. So very good. Thank you for making it possible.
It's really beautiful to see such a beautiful bond between writer, translator, and also such beautiful stories that I think everybody must read, because this is the real India, the India of its struggles, and also, for Mr. Kaikini to, he said that this child is trying to protect Sai Baba's face. It's raining. Then there's this guy called Mithun who's acting as Mithun's double, and he's falling, hurting himself. But then he's not made a big issue of these struggles, but just presented it to you the way they are, through his own emotions. And that still strikes a chord, somewhere deep inside it says, there are so many different Indias within this one India. And yet these are our real people. It actually brings tears, even when you listen to the story about the girl, trying to protect Baba's face. You don't know who Baba is, but it's a question of your bread and butter, your survival. You're there to do something, and this is the beauty of the work. And and I think because of this, a lot of people have also told you that your stories do not seem to end. Yeah. So before we throw the stage open to questions, if you could address that point, we could actually move on to questions from the audience.
Yeah, this ending of the story. I never feel any story can end. It can only have a pause. There is nothing, no end is possible. My mother, I remember my mother when I was a child, she used to read magazine stories, novels. She will always read the last page first, so that there should not be tension, she said. She said, I don't want to have tension whether they ran away or they got married, where he died or what, he was saved. So that kind of end I am not talking about, because I always look for a point of enlightenment, or a kind of a liberation amidst a human context. It is like you are in a public transport, but suddenly you are at a window seat. So it is a public transport, yes, but making reader sit in a window seat and look away. And anything is possible there. Anything enigmatic is possible there. So that transformation, I am not worried about transformed individual. I am not that much worried how was he before transformation. But that moment of transformation, it pushes me. It makes me, and it is very experiential. It is nothing to do with information. So most of my stories, I think they deal with that moment of transformation. So maybe that magical, whatever you call the moment of transformation, is the point where story tells me you stop me here. I don't have to, the problem is moment I try to override the story dies. I should listen to the story. Story tells, leave me here. That Yashwant Chittal always says, fish has a shape, that structure for its convenience for swimming. Bird has that shape naturally to convenience of flying. And each bird has a different kind of wings. A small bird has a small wing. Big bird has a big wing. So same way, each story, the structure is depending on its soul, what it is trying to understand. If what is trying to pursue is a small thing, whatever is enough for it to fly, that structure story only will give you. So that way I don't bother much. Moment I feel the story is, it's coming to some point of pause. like, you know, in Rangoli, you have dots, right? Different dots. So I feel I try to catch those dots. And then you can draw lines as you possible. Each reader has his own Rangoli. But the points of those such enlightenment, I try to catch. So such one of the moment in any story, it comes to an end, or there I feel I'll stop it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaikini. And now, could be other questions?
I am Dr. Hari Kumar, who has been in Bombay for 50 years. Now I am settled in Trivandrum. You have taken me to a nostalgic drive, local drive through Bombay. My books also vibes very well with your themes. Incidentally, let me tell you that in Nagara Kavita, that was a compendium of translations and poetry of migrant Malayalis. In that we had translated your poem from Kannada. I remember those days about 23 years back. Anyhow, my question here is, incidentally, my poetry titles are Pravasiyuda Mundu, Mumbai Manam, New Jersey Randu Chundakar, Signal. Okay, these are all migrant experiences. Now, my question is this. You have been a migrant from Canada and then resettled in Canada now. What is the status of migrant poets, not fiction writers, migrant poets in Canada? Because in Malayalam, they are sidelined, they are not even recognized. See, here there is a whole consideration for women writing, Dalit writing, forest writing, Kadal writing, means sea writing, Gotra writing, etc. But Pravasi poetry is nil. They think that there is no poetry in Pravasis. So what is your understanding of Kannada migrant poets? Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to know your poet also and writer also. I think every poet is a migrant. I know. But because moment you try to put again another slot, you know, because I have never kept in my writing, if you see, there is no theme of migration as it is. Like, you know, it is, I never named my, now to put the bunches together, we called it as a Mumbai story. There might be migration characters, but it is a plight of a human, you know, it's a plight of a human being, plight of a person. I have never thought that I should write about, migration, what happened to this thing, never. So I feel it's how you look at it. It's like medical science. It is same for everybody. Science is same for everybody. Maybe some details, some contexts are different. So I feel because in Kannada we don't have migration poetry kind of a thing. K.V. Tirumalesh, one of the finest poets of Kannada, he was in Hyderabad for all his life. Yashwant Chittal, he was all his life he was in Bombay. His stories or his fiction or his poetry, they are read or they are even adored or they were analyzed, valued by their human possibility space kind. That's what I can say. Sorry, I'm not able to answer your question properly. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for a wonderful session. I'm Radhika Session from Maharashtra, Pune actually, but lived a long time in Mumbai. Two questions actually, one to you and one to you, Ms. Niranjana. One is, what differences do you see in Mumbai over the 25, 30 years that you have spent there? That's to you. And to you, Ms. Niranjana, it's your book on the metropolitan unconsciousness. A question that I had when I was reading the book, and again now, is where do you place Bollywood music? Those are the two. Thank you.
See, now I have shifted to Bangalore in last 20, 25 years, but I keep going to Bombay. What happens is there are places which are very dear to you. You have grown there. The places where you have evolved. Those places will always evoke the same thing. Even the people, Paile jaisa nahi raha, it is no more like earlier. People will tell, It's not like this. It's full of branded shops. No more, more vehicles outside apartments, more traffic jam. But there is something in the mind of that collective mindset I'm talking about. I don't think that is much of a difference. I feel it the same. It is more digitally smart, no? So, yeah. That's why. So much so, it's everybody also. Recently, one poet asked me, "Sir, where do you get good poetry? How to catch good poetry?" I told him, "You can catch good poetry only in the areas where there is no network." So he didn't understand it. He says, "No, sir, then how will I share it with my friends and all that?" I said, "No, nothing. I'm talking something else." So this is what I feel, like.
I know that you asked me a question that might seem to have nothing to do with translation, but I do want to say that it's a translation question. So in my book, which I'm sure most people have not read, except you, that I do talk about how the melodic structures that form Hindustani music are not only from the classical tradition. They come from many situations, from theatre, from the folk. They're repurposed in modern settings in Mumbai in the late 19th century. And many of the people who migrated into Bombay from northern India, in particular from northern Karnataka, they were the same people who also then created music for Bombay films after the 1930s when the talkies emerged. So I would see it really as a very vast kind of spectrum. And you can't just isolate that and say this is classical music, this is film music, whatever. Of course, film music changes massively after the 1980s and 90s, but the music before that, from the 30s to about the 80s, I think has a very strong continuity with the melodic structures of Hindustani music. So it's being translated into that space.
So I am Dr. Arsha. Actually, years back, I was first reading your interview in The Hindu. And that time I was working as an intern doctor in my casualty. And my professor was saying that, do you know the DSC prize have been won by Dr. Jayant Kaikini? And I was very happy. And now currently I'm a senior resident doctor and I am suggesting your books to my students. The reason is you are watching life with very minute details where detailedly elaborated. So my question is it just your observation skills or the influence from your father who was a visionary that is helping you to write like this? I am a great fan of your writing style. That's why I'm asking.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled. Yeah, everything. Your observation, moment you call it skill, then again it is an acquired, Then you will have to attend some workshop to acquire it. See, the point is, you have, if you are sensitive enough to observe things, it will stay with you. It's a anything, I'll give you one example. Quickly, I will tell you. It can become a big thing. Recently, one of my friend's daughter, she is my fan also, fan of film songs. So most of young kids are fan of my film songs. So she came home and said, because there's some Mahabharata lesson was in the school, and that Draupadi Vastrapaharanam was there. So she came home and she is telling her mother, "What, the mummy? Draupadi didn't have common sense at all." Then why? What happened? Why didn't she use safety pin? She asked. So it was so very interesting, safety pin. See, that safety pin word itself has so much of, that word itself speaks about the plight of women. The word, that safety pin. And suddenly one safety pin brings you a lot of memories from your experience details. I still remember when Mughal-e-Azam was released, there was an interview in some Filmfare old issue where her that skirt, frilled skirt was very popular then, and everybody was craving for it. Then she said, "For you guys it is nice to see and applaud, but it had 300 safety pins during shooting." All those things. And you see any struggling, fighting housewife, you see the Mangala Sutra, the so-called Mangala Sutra, has more safety pins than pearls and diamonds. See, these are the images which it strike you. And yeah, my father was a visionary. I'm thankful to you because your generation people thinking about my father. They were like Teju's parents. Mr. Niranjana and Anupama Niranjana, you know, they have formed our sensibilities. Social being a social person itself was a religion for them. It was a virtue for them. So he has influenced my worldview, no doubt about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you could meet Mr. Kaikini and Niranjana outside because the sessions come to an end. And but go to the bookstore and pick up copies to have your copies signed. Yeah. Thank you.